Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was third son of Kaguya, part 4. Subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. The hot blistering sun of the desert shone on Suna, beating down mercilessly upon the residents' heads. One white-haired boy was not at all bothered by this though. While he didn't like the bright sun, preferring the moon, the warmth was nice. Naruto Ōtsutsuki Kaminoki was sitting on the roof of the Kaguya mansion, his activated ninjutsu staring blankly out over the village and down one of the main streets where villagers moved to and fro. The villagers were always giving the Kaguya mansion an even wider berth than they did before he came to live here. Questions it truly is the recurring theme in my life, Naruto decided. He was at an impasse. A large part of him wanted to just leave Suna and go out and learn, experience, find his nieces and nephews and then create his own village. On the other hand, he didn't want to leave his friends and miss growing up with them in the academy. It had been 3 days since he had woken up from his coma and he had since put all his thought into this. His father had told him that when he reached the second level of his bloodline, he would be able to form a unique style of cloning himself. But that wouldn't be for some time. Ah-san suggested like 8 different types of clones for me to use, but none would last long enough or survive any sort of hit. Baki would surely realize, Naruto mused. Kaguya hummed to herself within her son's mind, allowing him to figure out how he wanted to go about this in his own way. She only offered her advice and opinion when he asked for it because she wanted him to grow on his own. I'll always be here for him when he needs me though. Naruto mused. Getting up, he walked to the other side of the roof, looking down at where he'd already seen Gaara practicing earlier. Naruto extended his hand and headed toward Gaara, slowing his breathing and opening a gateway between them. "Aran-ai, can you hear me?" Naruto thought. On the ground below, Gaara stopped and turned, looking up at him with scrunched eyes. "Yes, Nai-san," was his near monotone reply. Naruto smiled. He was getting better at this slowly. "I've had a thought, something I want your opinion on. The only thing keeping me in this village is you, and I don't want to leave you. I want to suggest that we both leave the village," Naruto started. Gaara gave him a curious look but remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "I'm not saying abandon your siblings, but that we go out ahead to make a better place. Once we have made our own village they could come to us if they want." Naruto finished, watching as Gaara looked back down at the ground and thought about it. At that moment Temari walked out of the house. "Gaara, what did you do with the TV remote again?" she asked loudly. Gaara turned to his sister and they began talking. "I'll think about it, Nai-san," was Gaara's reply over the link before he wholly focused on his semi-enraged sister. Naruto nodded, turning back to the village and forcing his vision to zoom across it, seeing everything. Naruto sighed, "Ka-san, Tu-san, I am ready to begin my training now." Naruto could feel his mother smile in his mindscape. "Okay. You need a place to train where no one will find you. The people of this village will try to catch you and replicate your bloodline if they learn how powerful it is," Kaguya instructed. Naruto nodded and vaulted off the roof, using chakra to empower his limbs, as Baki had taught him. Sometime later he came to the wall of Sunagakure, the high sand cliffs that towered around the village, and gave it protection against invaders. Jumping as high as he could, he was met by his plants reaching out from the wall, forming platforms to help him continue to leap higher and higher up. He finally reached the top and climbed into a spacious open flat area. "I really need to learn how to walk on surfaces," Naruto mused. Baki hadn't taught them that yet. "Sit down, Naruto-kun, and I will explain your bloodline in more detail," Kaguya ordered. The white-haired boy nodded. "Now, there is a range of techniques that you can use in the first level of your bloodline and you can develop more." Kaguya switched into a mother lecture voice, like the one your mother gets when she's explaining how to use the stove for the first time. "There are 3 levels to this bloodline and you are currently at level 1. You may have noticed when you woke up that you felt different." Naruto nodded. Now that he thought about it, he had felt different, but he couldn't describe the feeling. "There are many things you can do with this level, but I will start with 2 basics. The first is your ability to dissolve yourself into chakra, which has 2 forms, and the second is your ability to create things out of chakra. These 2 techniques don't have a name because, honestly, we have never bothered to give them any," Kaguya lectured, getting a mental nod from her horned child. "Now, as you know, you aren't human. Due to your father, you are already mostly an entity of chakra that has taken a physical form that looks like Ōtsutsuki." Naruto raised an interesting eyebrow at this. "That reminds me of the Bijk, living entities of chakra," he mused. Kaguya nodded. "That's because you are very similar to them. This bloodline is easier for you to use because of that, and it would be easier for them to use, as well. Though your Tu-san has refused to give it to them." Kaguya chuckled at that, remembering the 5 tail monkeys begging on hands and knees dramatically. Anyway, this bloodline, at its basics, allows you to switch between your chakra entity-like form and your physical form much easier than you would be able to do otherwise. If this bloodline were given to a human, they wouldn't survive without a Bijkindam or some other large chakra source. They would also go through intense pain when they move to the second level, as well as releasing a chakra pulse large enough to alert the entire elemental nations. Kaguya continued on in her lecture, Naruto quietly absorbing what his mother was teaching him. So, one of the abilities you gain distinctly from this bloodline is your ability to construct objects out of your chakra. This is helped along by the extreme control over chakra that you attain from this bloodline. In fact, you will never have to do chakra control exercises, no matter how much chakra you have, Kaguya explained, feeling Naruto's excitement. Naruto had already gone through some intense chakra control under Baki just to be able to use any, and he didn't like it. He found he had enormous reserves for his age. Though once he awakens his Rinnegan that wouldn't have mattered anyway, Kaguya mused. Using this ability, you can create almost anything out of your chakra, whether it be clothes, weapons, or things you can throw, as long as you know what the object looks like. Kaguya continued, this skill was inspired by the Rinnegan's creation of all things technique, but you won't be able to create living beings or the actual materials of objects like the Rinnegan can. Also, if you master your bloodline you can use it in replacement of the normal ninjutsu and genjutsu that shinobi use. Instead, you will use moves that utilize chakra in its purest form and control to achieve similar effects. This bloodline allows you to do massive amounts of damage and not use up nearly any chakra at all. The last thing for right now. I want you to dissolve into chakra. If it works, your body will melt and you will become a cloud composed of chakra, Kaguya ordered. Naruto stood, concentrating on making his body dissolve, as his mother wanted. A couple of minutes later, Naruto's focused expression became calm and he slowly started to vaporize from the legs up into black and white chakra, dissipating into the air like smoke. The smog didn't move and hovered right where Naruto had been. Excellent, Naruto. Kaguya praised. Okay, now attempting to dematerialize, she ordered, carefully watching Naruto's body from the inside. This technique is extremely useful, as it teleports a person away by dissolving their body into chakra. While effective and useful, it has a nasty side effect if done wrong. There is a chance to lose parts of one's body. But Kaguya was confident that her son would figure it out, he was already brilliant. She still wanted to have some fun at his expense though. A moment later the smoke started condensing into a roughly humanoid form the size of Naruto. Once it solidified, Kaguya broke out laughing at what she could see. Naruto's head was coming out of his left shoulder, while his left arm was coming out of his neck. His right leg was coming out of his spine, and his right arm out of his left leg socket basically, it didn't really work. Hey. What happened to me? Naruto freaked out as he tried to move, which just resulted in him falling down on his face and elbow. Oh, that was priceless. Kaguya nearly rolled around on the floor of the mindscape, just barely keeping her dignity. She was unable to contain her laughter at Naruto's expense, who was quite stuck and doing his best to send his mother a mental glare from his awkward position. It's okay, Naruto-kun, it will take a while to get this right, Kaguya chuckled. Channeling her potent Imkai through Naruto's body, she took temporary control of him and dissolved his body back into smoke. A moment later he reformed correctly. Naruto breathed deeply for a couple of moments. That was so weird, but really cool. Naruto yelled excitedly. Kaguya just smiled at her son, enjoying another one of his childish outbursts. Naruto was about to try it again when Kaguya stopped him. Naruto-kun, wait for that for now. I want to teach you the other form of this ability. Naruto stopped concentrating on dissolving himself and stood straight, waiting for his mother to continue. Naruto, focus on two strands. These two strands rotate around each other over and over again, feel the motion, and allow your feeling to flow. This is the secret to the bloodline. Your father invented it, so it's mostly used for feelings. You will get better at the first form once you understand this, Kaguya lectured, getting a nod from her pale-eyed, horned son. Naruto relaxed his body, closing his pale eyes as he imagined two strands rotating around each other. He felt like he was falling for a moment. Opening his eyes, he found his vision to be like his Byakugan, though it wasn't activated. He could see 360 degrees around himself. Looking inward, he discovered his body missing, and instead there were two strands of black and white chakra rotating around each other, like a dual helix. This is so cool. Naruto exclaimed. Kaguya laughed, now, feel, and want to go to the top of the Kazekage mansion. Naruto did so, and he was amazed to find himself flying through the air at high speeds, the two strands rotating around each other faster as he flew through the air. He reached the top of the mansion a moment later and settled on its surface, his body reforming between the two strands before they were fully absorbed into him. Naruto abruptly felt extreme exhaustion, his body not used to switching between pure chakra and a physical form. Naruto stumbled across the roof a couple of steps before regaining his control. "Are you okay, Naruto-kun?" Kaguya asked worriedly. Naruto nodded. "I'm fine, Kasan, that was just really tiring and strange." Well, he felt right, being a pure chakra construct, he wasn't used to it. "That's good, Naruto-kun. You may want to know that you left your clothes on top of the wall though," Kaguya said teasingly. Naruto froze and glanced down for the first time, realizing that he had, in fact, not brought his clothes with him when he traveled to the top of the mansion. Naruto's face burned red in embarrassment and he attempted to cover himself. Naruto could hear his mother's laughter in his mind. She almost sounded like she was crying. Naruto was trying to figure out how to get off the roof and into his room to get another set of clothes. "That was so funny." Kaguya giggled at her son's expense. "Oh, okay, Naruto, don't worry about it. You know how I said you can form things out of your chakra?" Naruto nodded, realizing what she was saying. Naruto needed no guidance, his embarrassment and need for clothes transmitting with his chakra very clearly. In under 5 seconds, his old kimono and sash formed around him, covering his dignity before it could be destroyed. Naruto breathed deeply, then froze again, as a new thought hit him. "My clothes fell off the first time I tried to dissolve into chakra, didn't they?" Naruto questioned suspiciously. "Yep," was Kaguya's laughing and giggling reply. "Mother." Naruto huffed, only getting more laughter. Naruto shook his head and decided to try the smoke technique again. Concentrating and ignoring his mother's slowing giggles, he dissolved into black and white smoke. He then moved swiftly through the air to his window and seeped through the crack beneath it. Once entirely inside, he formed with clothes on, this time inside his room, collapsing down on the bed in exhaustion. Naruto took a few moments to get himself under control. "Kasan, what else will I be learning? I want to make sure to know shinobi skills as well," Naruto asked. "Well, you see," Naruto raising an eyebrow, confused. Naruto was sure his mother sounded distinctly embarrassed. Before Naruto could piece it together, he felt his father connect to his mind and knowledge pass through. "You don't actually have any shinobi training," Naruto laughed, enjoying having something over his mother as revenge for the prank with his clothes. Kaguya moped, her red lips curling cutely. Naruto was sentimental image of her face by his father, which only made him laugh harder. He could feel his father's equivalent to laughter through the link as well. "Stop it," Kaguya shouted playfully, pretending to pout. Naruto's laughter decreased and he regained his usual calm. "My apologies, mother, that was just too funny. You're the creator of all chakra on earth and have watched humans since they gained it and you don't actually know any of their training," Naruto teased. Kaguya pouted harder. "It's not my fault, it wasn't important. I never needed to know ninjutsu and ninja isn't a fighting art. Besides, I'll know after I regain all my chakra from the Bijk and with it their memories," Kaguya defended. Naruto just chuckled before letting the matter drop. "So essentially I'm going to need a sensei to teach me the basics?" Naruto asked. He received a pouty nod from his mother, who was still worked up over his teasing. "Mother, know that you not being able to train me doesn't matter to me. I'm overjoyed to simply have you and you can be a part of my life and be someone to love and talk to," Naruto said kindly, channeling his love and appreciation through the mind link to both parents. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. We love you too," Kaguya replied warmly. Love and protectiveness flowed from the link of his father as well. Konoha. Mikado woke with a start, not knowing where he was. He moved around and knocked the box over, falling out with a splash and rolling across the muddy alleyway before coming to a stop. It was raining. "Of course it is," Nakata thought as he pushed himself to his feet and rubbed his shoulders, trying to bring some warmth into his frail body. Nakata shook his head to get the mud out of his hair as he walked down the alleyway. As he walked he saw his reflection in a puddle. He had spiky red hair and violet eyes. On both sides of his face were 3 whisker marks. He was wearing tattered rags that were already soaked from the rain and while he looked mostly healthy, one could tell he didn't get food very often. Covering what was visible of his skin were scars of all shapes and sizes. He was hungry and he needed to find food. He headed toward the marketplace, hoping to get lucky. Very few shops would be open this early and in the rain. Nakata's nose twitched as he picked up a strong smell of cinnamon rolls. Moments later, he found the stand that was selling them. It was a friendly-looking place, warm light filling the inside as the cinnamon-scented smoke poured out of a small pipe at the top. Nakata started walking toward it but froze before he left the safety of the alleyway. "He'll just throw me out and then I'll be spotted by everyone," Nakata realized. Steeling himself, he moved through the shadows of the buildings. A couple of minutes later he made it to the side of the stand, trying to work up a plan to steal some food. He suddenly tensed as a lady with red eyes, black hair, and a gray raincoat came up to the stand. "Hey, can I get 5 cinnamon rolls to go?" the lady asked. Nakata couldn't see the owner's response, but he guessed that he nodded. Nakata knew that he needed to take advantage of the man's distraction to snatch some food. Slowly, he crawled backward and out of the sight of the red-eyed lady. For a moment he thought she'd spotted him, but she turned her attention elsewhere. A man with a cigarette in his mouth had just walked up to her and they started talking. Nakata ignored their conversation as it didn't matter to him what they were saying. He slipped inside the back of the stall and crawled under the tables, spying the fresh cinnamon rolls on a tray. The owner was walking back to the front counter to hand the lady her order. "Now," Nakata thought. Darting out from under the counter he grabbed 2 rolls, but the lady with the red eyes spotted him. "Sir?" she said to the baker while pointing at Nakata. Turning, as quickly as he could, Nakata rushed out of the stall. But the owner turned just fast enough to see him running and recognize his whiskers. "It's the demon brat," the owner roared, seizing a slicing knife off his counter and taking off after the demon. The lady's eyes hardened and she started to run around the side of the building. The cigarette man beside her also took up pursuit of the boy. Both of their eyes hardened with hatred for the demon thief. Nakata shot down the street, just finishing stuffing the second roll down his throat. He looked over his shoulder to see the shop owner in hot pursuit, yelling at nearby villagers to help him catch the demon. Nakata's eyes widened when he noticed the lady in the grey raincoat jumping across the rooftops. The cigarette man followed just behind her. "It's Shinobi," Nakata thought in terror. He started to get even more scared when the lady started going through hand seals. Nakata tried to pour out more speed, but he was already so tired. Suddenly his world went black and he crashed to the pavement. He struggled to open his eyes, but was unable to tell if his eyes were open or closed. Everything was so dark. Suddenly he was bound to a tree in the middle of the street. The woman and man Shinobi were standing in front of him while the shop owner and several villagers were running toward him. "No. Let me go please." Nakata shouted at them, trying his best to break out, but to no avail. The red-eyed woman gained a dangerous glint in her eye. Pulling out a kunai, she stabbed Nakata in the shoulder. Nakata screamed as she twisted it and kicked him hard in the stomach. The tree he had been tied to disappeared and he crashed into a wall, slumping to the ground a second later. "Let's go to Asuma. Let the villagers give the demon what he deserves," the woman said with repugnance. Asuma smirked, removing the cigarette from his mouth and tossing it aside. "Just a sec, I want to turn," Asuma replied, an evil grin on his face. He pulled 2 trench knives out of his pouch and slipped them onto his hands. Nakata looked at him in terror and tried to scramble away. The red-eyed lady pulled a kunai from her pouch and threw it at Nakata. The kunai suddenly stopped in mid-air, running into several pieces of floating paper. Nakata watched with wide eyes as something formed out of paper in front of him. It had a paper flower in its purple hair. Nakata could only see the back of it but could tell it was a human-like body wearing a black cloak with red clouds. "How dare you?" It was a woman and she was furious. Asuma and the red-eyed lady narrowed their eyes, backing up and slipping into ready stances. All of the onlookers were crushed under the purple-haired woman's killing intent, turning and running over each other in their hurry to escape. There was no more accurate saying in the shinobi world than "hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Nakata watched in amazement as hundreds of paper shuriken formed all around the lady, spinning at high speeds. They were all about to fly forward when the red-eyed lady, Asuma, collapsed to the ground on their faces with a thud. Nakata peeked around the purple-haired lady. Behind his 2 attackers stood 2 more people wearing similar cloaks to his saviors. One had spiky orange hair and a look of pure rage for the people collapsed in front of him. Nakata's eyes widened as he took in the third person. He had red hair and violet eyes just like him. "Maybe we are related," Nakata thought hopefully. Wincing from the pain in his chest, he fought the urge to make any noise as he began to feel lightheaded. The purple-haired lady turned around and looked at him. "Hello Nakata-kun, my name is Conan," she said kindly. Nakata noticed her beautiful amethyst eyes. Nakata got out before passing out and falling over. Conan lifted him up in her arms as the rain was pouring hard all around them, soaking everyone and everything. "Let's go," Nagato said, his voice iron and barely containing his rage. "Hi. Okage Tower. Okage-sama. Intruders. We are trying to keep them out, but they are breaking through the defenses." A hawk mask Anbu reported to his leader. Sarutobi's face was grim. He stood in the middle of his office solemnly, the loud noise of the rain slamming against the windows filling the room. "Order the Anbu to let them in," Sarutobi replied, confusing his subordinate. The Anbu obeyed anyway. "It has to be Nagato, I saw his chains outside." Sarutobi's face went to Shen as he then realized why Nagato would be angry. "Sarutobi?" At that moment, the oak doors to his office exploded into thousands of pieces. 4 ethereal purple chains twisted and lashed through the air menacingly as 3 people walked in, each cloaked in a black robe with red clouds. "You failed your promise." Nagato roared, his spiked chains flying toward the Hokage. Sarutobi paled. Leaning back, he dodged the first chain before leaping over the next one. "Calm down, Nagato, let's talk about this." Nagato only seemed to become more enraged at this. 2 more chains flew out of his back toward the Hokage, one actually piercing through the Hokage's robe and holding him to the wall of his office. Right then the Anbu decided that, regardless of their Hokage's orders, they were to do their sworn job. 8 Anbu appeared out of the shadows and, with chakra-enhanced swords, sliced through the chains, dissipating the part that wasn't still attached to Nagato. Said Redeed scowled as he pulled his chains closer to him, 6 purple chakra chains moving back and forth around him menacingly. Sarutobi stood up from the wall, his quick eye taking in his attackers, his mind processing what Nagato said. It was at that moment he spotted Konan holding Nakata in her arms, glaring at him as she stroked the Redeed's hair. Nagato physically calmed himself down with great apparent struggle, his facial features relaxing and his chains receding into his back. Sarutobi wasn't sure if he was more scared of Nagato than enraged. "Okage-sama," Nagato started, spitting his name like it was poison. "You have failed your promise to Minato-sama." All 3 of them stared daggers of flame at the old man. Sarutobi replied, visibly deflated and with his shoulders hunching over, "I know. I am disappointed in you. Kushina Jitsu and Minato-sama are disappointed with you," Nagato said. Sarutobi visibly cowered, shocking all the present and extremely confused Anbu. "Minato. Yondaime. You will allow me to leave the village with Uzumaki Nakata. We will take him to us with a megakure." Nagato's voice broke no argument. Sarutobi shakily nodded. While he didn't want to let Nakata go, he recognized that he was on the edge of having a war with a megakure, and since Nagato's ascension to power, the village had grown majorly. A megakure was not yet as big as one of the great villages, but they could still make a significant dent in his village. "We will return with him in 5 years, where he will enter the academy and become a genin if he wants to. It will be up to him if he still wishes to be a part of this wretched village." Nagato's voice was sharp enough to cut steel. The Hokage only nodded shakily while standing to his feet, the 8 Anbu still positioned between him and Nagato. "You have no more right to Uzumaki Nakata. You have failed your promise, broken your oath, and left my cousin to the wolves," Nagato declared, turning and leaving. Konan spat in his direction and followed after the enraged Redeed, carrying the Kyuubi Jinchuriki in her arms. The last person standing in the room was the man with orange hair. "These 2 are your shinobi and were assaulting an innocent and defenseless child. They used kunai and ninjutsu against a 6-year-old. I expect them to be punished accordingly." Yahiko's voice carried a threatening undertone. Raising his hands, in a puff of smoke 2 people appeared on the floor in front of him. Sarutobi's eyes widened as he recognized the 2 unconscious people, Kurenai Yuhi, rising Jinjutsu specialist, and his son, Asuma Sarutobi. Here is inside and watched as the orange-haired man glared at him as he disappeared in a swirl of water a moment later. "What are your orders, Hokage-sama?" "Take them both to Ibiki," Hiruzen replied heavily, collapsing in his office chair. "And the Kyuubi Jinchuriki?" one of the Anbu asked. Sarutobi's eyes shot up, looking directly at the Anbu. "Whatever you do, you are not to impede them from leaving in any way. Am I understood?" "Aye, Hokage-sama," was the chorus of acknowledgements before they all disappeared, leaving the old leader to his thoughts and misery. "I failed you, Minato Kushina." Sarutobi knew he had no one to blame but himself. He had done a lousy job of taking care of Nakata and it was entirely his fault. "I hope you find a better life, Nakata." "Sunagakure? That's the last of everything you want to bring with you?" Naruto asked his friend. Gaara nodded in response, his sand dropping a few of his personal belongings on a scroll in the middle of Naruto's room. "Good, then." Naruto channeled chakra to the scroll and a vast assortment of miscellaneous objects on top of the seal disappeared. Naruto nodded before rolling the scroll up. "Now how do I carry this with me?" Naruto mused, looking at the rather large scroll. He needed to be able to use his chakra dissolving techniques, so he couldn't carry it. "Naruto, open up one of the other scrolls you bought," Kaguya ordered. Naruto obeyed quickly, unrolling a scroll of similar size. They had been unsure how much they wanted to bring. "Now place your palm on the center of the seal, feel the seal, and attempt to bring it into yourself." Naruto nodded, doing so. Gaara and Naruto watched in amazement as the ink and kanji flowed off the paper and up his arm before forming into an intricate pattern. The kanji for seal settled in the middle of his palm. A moment later all the ink faded away. Naruto inspected his arm while Gaara just watched, very interested in this new development. "What just happened?" Naruto asked. You absorbed the chakra and ink of the seal. Your body, being chakra itself, learned how to use the seal. You can now seal things into yourself, Kaguya explained. Naruto's eyes went wide. Moving to the large rolled-up scroll, he placed his palm on it before channeling chakra to his palm. The next moment the parchment disappeared into his palm and was gone. Gaara's eyes grew considerably. "How did you do that, Nai-san?" he inquired curiously. Naruto shook his head. "Apparently my new bloodline allows my body to adapt to and absorb seals." "Interesting," Naruto replied, getting a surprised look from Gaara. "Are you ready, Gaara?" "Hi. Tonight then." That night, Gaara and Naruto moved carefully across the village rooftops, keeping as quiet as they could and out of sight. Their destination was the entrance gate to the Sand Village. Gaara had agreed with Naruto's idea after thinking about it for a while. Besides Naruto, Temari, and Kankuro, he had nothing tying him to the village. After getting Gaara's agreement with the plan, Naruto discreetly told Temari and Kankuro what they were going to do, not wanting to leave them in the dark. Gaara was concerned about his father's spies, so Naruto used his mind link with Temari and Kankuro to explain it to them. Both of them wished them luck in their travels, not wanting them to go. But they both decided to stay in the village. Temari and her brother agreed that if Naruto did end up creating the place he wanted to, that they would come there. Neither were staying because of any loyalty to Suna, their father. They died when they learned of all the assassination attempts against Gaara and Naruto by their father and many villagers. Temari and Kankuro did have friends in the Suna village though, and they didn't want to just up and leave them. Naruto and Gaara launched across another space, pausing when a voice rang out. "Hey, you there. Stop. Identify yourself and your reason for being here." Naruto turned, activating his ninjutsu for the first time that night, cursing himself for forgetting he had such an advantage. Naruto said, as he saw the shinobi. His non-human characteristics began lighting up in the moonlight. Gaara turned slightly, one green eye staring at the two shinobi who had obstructed them. "You're the Shiroi Oni," the man stammered in terror, now recognizing just who he had stopped. Promptly fearing for his life, he hastily backed up past his partner, who apparently wasn't afraid of either of the two demons. "What are you doing here? You're not allowed out this late at night. Go back to your cage." The Sand Chunin sneered at them, pulling out a kunai and stalking closer to the demonic duo. Naruto raised a clipped eyebrow. "That's okay, we were just leaving," Naruto replied, beginning to walk toward the entrance to the village. Gaara followed after him calmly. "Where are you going? You must return to the Kazukiyage's mansion at once." The brave, or possibly stupid, Chunin yelled at their backs, getting an incredulous look from his partner. "Let me leave with my brother in peace, I don't want to have to kill you," Naruto said smoothly, still staring forward, though he could see the two Chunin level ninja behind him clearly. "Both the hated demons are leaving your village, is that not enough?" he asked. The one sensible Chunin was severely frightened by Naruto's smooth and almost regal tone. "Ha! Right. I'm taking you both back to the Kazukiyage. If you don't come peacefully, I'll kill you." Chunin's face betrayed his rage as he leaped forward. He had a personal vendetta against Naruto. A few years earlier, Naruto had killed his father when he attempted to assassinate Naruto in a back alleyway. Naruto smirked, "Guess I'll be trying that new technique sooner than I thought." Stretching out his hand, he felt himself connected to the rushing Chunin's chakra supply. Gaara watched in interest as Naruto squeezed his hand slightly and the Chunin crumpled to the ground in pain. "Do you still wish to fight us?" Naruto asked, raising a clipped eyebrow as the Chunin struggled to his feet. The angry, vengeful Chunin started to hastily go through hand seals. "No. Gakido, don't," shouted the other Chunin in horror from the nearby roof. Naruto's pale pupil-less eyes narrowed, and before the Chunin finished his last seal, Naruto crushed his hand together and pulled. Gakido let out an ear-piercing scream and collapsed to the ground on his face. Naruto felt rejuvenated as he pulled the man's chakra into himself. He turned to where the other Chunin had been, only to see him quickly running away. Naruto shrugged, turning toward the gate. "Gaara, it seems our secret got out. There are around 30 shinobi guarding the gate." Gaara only shrugged back. Launching off at the same time, they moved across the roofs quickly, abandoning stealth entirely for speed. Arriving near the gate, they found there were indeed a large number of Suna shinobi guarding the entrance. With his Byakugan, Naruto gazed over the ninja, Gaara standing next to him with his arms crossed. "Chunin, Jounin, and Anbu," Naruto thought. "Do you want to deal with them or should I?" Gaara asked emotionlessly, though his semi-bloodshot eyes gave away his desire to annihilate. Naruto smirked, "How about us both?" Gaara showed no visible reaction, but dropped to the street below. Naruto followed after, his white robes fluttering in the air as he fell. "This is your one chance to move out of our way," Naruto warned, glaring at them all. Something moved in the corner of his vision. Gaara, your father is coming. Let's make this quick. Gaara's grin grew massively, throwing himself forward as sand poured violently out of his gourd and from the ground around him. Naruto dissolved into a double helix of black and white chakra and flew toward the shinobi on the left. One of the Anbu dodged his quick attack, but the Chunin behind him was not so fortunate. When Naruto's helix form hit the Chunin, it drilled into him, creating a large hole in his chest before passing through and taking a shock Jounin by surprise. Gaara was also wreaking havoc, having plenty of experience fighting Chunin to Anbu level ninja that had been sent to assassinate him over his lifespan. He swirled his sand through the air, creating a sizable hammer-like shape. He swung it around before batting several ninjas out of the way and into a wall. Sand shuriken. Gaara cried, causing sand to form into tens of shuriken around him. The next moment they all flew forward rapidly, nailing the slower Chunin while the rest dodged. Gaara growled. He needed to kill them all quickly before his father arrived. Neither he nor Naruto was strong enough yet to take on the Kazukiage. While Naruto's ability to steal a person's chakra was effective, he had to be more powerful than his opponents to wrestle their chakra away from them. Gaara smiled insanely as he crushed two Jounin to smithereens in a dual sand burial. Bukina, great explosion, Gaara heard from his left. Turning, he watched as Naruto threw his hands toward his remaining ninja. A second later, a massive explosion racked the area, the blast of black and white chakra appearing right in the middle of the group, sending them flying, some in pieces. Gaara watched in amazement. His attention was drawn back to his opponents when his sand shot up and blocked a wind blade attack aimed at his neck. Growling demonically, Gaara sent his sand flying forward in an attempt to capture the last few remaining Anbu. Two moved out of the way to the sides while the third shot up into the sky. That proved to be a mistake as Naruto's helix form pierced into the Anbu's back, forcing him into the ground and drilling a hole through his chest a moment later. Gaara turned his attention to one of the Anbu who was firing a continuous barrage of wind blades at him. His sand swirled around him, protecting him from the sharp air. Naruto was currently still in his helix form. Drilling through the ground, he came out from under the second Anbu a moment later, taking him by surprise. But the Anbu dodged out of the way before Naruto rammed into him. Naruto formed back into his natural body in midair. Using the momentum, he threw several shurikens at the Anbu who blocked with his kunai. Naruto scowled. The Kazukiage was already here, watching from the nearby rooftops. If we are going to fight the Kazukiage, then we can't have any distractions, Naruto thought. Calling on the plants, he rapped and quickly crushed the pesky Anbu. Ignoring the screams of pain and blood all around him, he leaped quickly to Gaara's side as he was burying the last Anbu in the sand. "He's here," Naruto said. Gaara nodded and called all of his sand back to him. Naruto watched intently with his Byakugan as gold dust began to flow from the Kazukiage, surrounding the area that they were in with a light layer of floating reflective gold. His eyes narrowed as the Kazukiage dropped to the ground in front of them. "It seems that my two most powerful weapons are trying to escape," the Kazukiage said as he came closer, his gold swirling around him in a way similar to Gaara's sand. "Your weapons? I think you misunderstood Kazukiage-sama," Naruto replied, his voice monotone. "Oh? What do I not understand?" Naruto and Gaara shifted into combat stances. "We were never your weapons," they said together before rushing the Kazukiage. Gaara's sand flew toward his father, though it was blocked by a wall of gold dust. Naruto saw an opening and threw his hands toward the Sun-A leader. Thick, nasty-looking vines proliferated out of the ground toward the Kazukiage. Yet he looked unfazed. Dawn. Nku no Kei's kick, wind sphere of the hawk. Sharp wind blades spun into existence around the Kazukiage, fluttering his cage robes and slicing through the vines that attempted to reach him. Naruto scowled at his plants being cut up. While a normal wind attack wouldn't hurt the plants, Naruto could see the massive amount of chakra within the. Both he and Gaara backed up, the Redeed retracting his sand. It was at that moment the Kazukiage decided to attack. Giant. Richie Supeku, Magnet Release. Rich Spikes. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched the cage's chakra pour into the soil under them. Faster than Naruto could react, the gold dust spikes shot out of the ground. Naruto watched them coming, opening his mouth to yell at Gaara to move. Naruto's eyes were wide as he watched a spike come directly for him. Fury suddenly saturated the air as a massive amount of plants burst out of the ground, wrapping around the gold spike coming for Naruto and lifting him away from the danger. In his mind, Naruto could feel his father's protectiveness, thankful for it. Naruto regained his bearings quickly and with his vision sharpening, he found Gaara and froze. Gaara's sand had moved to protect Gaara, but it hadn't been anywhere near as fast as Naruto's plants. Straight through Gaara's stomach, there was a sharp spike of gold dust. Gaara hacked up blood, convulsing. "Gaara!" Naruto cried from his perch in the air, being carried by the plants. The next moment the multiple gold spikes across the ground retreated, the gold returning back to the Kazukiage, who watched the scene in fascination. "Gaara, no!" Naruto yelled. Dropping to the ground, he ran over to Gaara's paling form. Blood was pouring out of the large wound in his chest. The sand protecting Gaara moved out of Naruto's path before continuing to whirl around the boys. Gaara tried to talk, but his lungs were missing a rather significant amount of them. Naruto's eyes were wide, fury boiling over in massive quantities as he felt power, rage, and wrath pouring through him. "You!" Naruto yelled, whirling toward the Kazukiage. Rage and loathing for the man in front of him consumed his entire being. Naruto tried to take a step forward before he collapsed to the ground in pain. Screaming, he moved his hands to his throbbing eyes. Pulling them away, he found vivid green blood covering his hands. It was the first time he noticed the color of his blood. Within the mindscape, Kaguya watched her baby boy in concern, preparing to defend him in any way that she could. Her husband had protected Naruto from the last attack, and she was going to help too. Kaguya's eyes widened in shock and amazement as she felt Naruto's body pulse with power. He's already unlocked it at such a young age. It must have been because of Gaara, Kaguya thought. She routed her chakra through her son to relieve his pain as much as she could. In the real world, light green, black, and white chakra swirled violently around Naruto. On the ground nearby, Gaara laid wrapped up in a sand cocoon, Shukaku doing his best to mend his host. The Kazukiage watched in astonishment as the white-haired boy stood to his feet, his hair and garments fluttering wildly. Anticipating an attack, he moved his gold closer and in front of him. The cage wasn't mentally prepared for what he saw though. "No, no, no, no." The Kazukiage yelled, his eyes widening as he saw Naruto reopen his eyes. Instead of the normal pale pupil-less eyes Naruto ordinarily possessed, his eyes were now red. The Kazukiage watched in amazement and shock as 3 Tomo spun furiously around Naruto's now visible pupil. "Die!" Naruto screamed, extending both his hands forward. The cage moved his gold into a shield and watched as Naruto's eyes changed further, the Tomo molding into swirled lines originating from his pupils. From the swirl were attached small leaf-like shapes. Amaterasu. Naruto's eyes profusely bled light green as black flames instantly shot forth. If the Kazukiage had not been prepared for an attack, he'd have been hit by the black flames. Instead, they latched onto his protective shield of metal and immediately began to disintegrate it. The Kazukiage quickly performed a Kawarimi to get out of Naruto's attack, watching in astonishment from the shadows as his gold was melted into liquid and then dissolved entirely. Naruto collapsed to his knees once more, holding his eyes as they bled through his fingers. He cried in relief as he felt his mother's and father's powers flowing through his body, easing the intense pain he was experiencing. Regaining enough self-control to move over to Gaara's prone body, Naruto shakily placed a hand on Gaara's forehead and connected to his mind. "Shukaku, are you there?" Naruto asked, his voice unsteady. "Yeah. Working hard on repairing them, you need to get out of there, and fast. Rasa Baka is going to come back," the crazy one-tail answered. Naruto sent him a mental nod before separating. Naruto tried to focus his Byakugan on finding Rasa, but found that it wouldn't activate. Confused, he lurched to his feet and looked around, trying to find the Kazukiage. Because of his momentary lack of 360-degree vision, he was blindsided by Rasa's attack. A slam from the gold sent him flying into a building before falling to the ground. The plants were only milliseconds behind the speed of the gold. "Wah!" Naruto choked out, wiping the green blood from his mouth. "Naruto-kun. Let me take control. I'll get you and Gaara out of here, but you'll be unconscious for some time," Kaguya's concerned voice requested. Naruto nodded painstakingly before quickly releasing his control over his body. Kaguya's Imkai pulsed through her son faster and repaired his injuries. She looked up and saw the Kazukiage walking calmly toward Gaara's prostrate form, the sand rising up to protect the injured and unconscious Rinnegan. Kaguya scowled. Switching quickly into Naruto's helix form, she flew through the air, making the Kazukiage dodge out of the way to avoid being hit and backing up. She glanced at him before forming above Gaara, dropping down and picking him up. Looking away from the Kazukiage, she raised Naruto's hand, channeling her and the contribution from her husband's energy into Naruto's forehead. The young Rinnegan opened in a pulse of magnificent power and began spinning quickly. "Imatsu Hirasaka." She cried out, and before her, a black rift opened in the air. As it slid open, a black expanse was visible within. Rasa's eyes widened. He slung his gold dust forward in an attempt to stop them from entering what he assumed was a portal. It was too late. Kaguya jumped through the gateway, pulling Gaara and his sand through the portal before it slid shut. The gold dust slammed into where it was just a second later. "Damn it." Rasa cursed. I shouldn't have played with them. Lamenting, he turned and stomped toward the tower, his gold filtering out of the ground and back into the pouches on his belt. With Naruto. The black portal slid open above the grassy ground and Naruto fell through in a heap, followed by Gaara and his sand. Naruto groaned, his spinning Rinnegan closing. Flopping over, Naruto looked at the dark night sky and noticed the trees around him. Thank you Ka-san, To-san, Naruto mumbled out before darkness overcame him. He passed out a moment later. Kaguya smiled from within the seal, glad to be able to help her son. They never stood a chance. Even with all of Naruto's powers, he doesn't yet equal the power of a cage, Kaguya thought. She smiled as she felt her husband's natural presence move to Naruto's location in the forest. The trees gained more color, the leaves rustled in the air, and the animals chirped happily to feel the presence of the Kaminoki. Kaguya sensed the outside world as she observed vines and plants come out of the ground, forming a dome over Naruto and Gaara's forms. The grass covering the ground became fuller and softer, creating a silky resting place for the two young and battered boys. But the amorphins. Where am I? Nakata groaned. Sitting up, he held his head. His senses suddenly came into focus as he smelled food. Opening his eyes slowly, he took in his surroundings. It was dark, but he could see a campfire about a dozen feet from him. He was partly in a sleeping bag, but he could see 3 people sitting cross-legged around the fire, eating a meal. Nakata's eyes narrowed. Unable to make out the people in their dark clothing, he tried to quietly slip out of the sleeping bag and make a run for it. It wouldn't be the first time he had been kidnapped. Nakata, there is no need to fear. He froze and turned to the voice. Seeing the man directly across the fire looking at him, he recognized his red hair and violet eyes and, for some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity with him. You were there when Nakata paused, looking unsure for a moment. Oh yeah, Konan-chan protected me from the red-eyed woman, he said slowly as he stitched his memories back together. At his announcement one of the other figures turned and he could make out her face. Konan-chan. You're here. Nakata said joyfully, running over and sitting next to her. Hello Nakata-kun, she replied, a smile on her face. Nakata smiled back, Konan-chan, thank you for saving me. But where are we? Did you kidnap me? Nakata suddenly looked afraid as he realized that he didn't actually have that much to go on to trust her. Konan frowned before turning to the red-haired man. Getting his cue, he coughed and drew Nakata's attention to him. Hello Nakata. My name is Nagato Uzumaki and I am your cousin. Nakata's eyes widened majorly, I've got a cousin. I'm not alone. Nakata nearly screamed in excitement, running around the fire and bowling into Nagato, nearly knocking him over. From the sidelines, the orange-haired man chuckled at his friend's misfortune. He was happy to see Nakata so energetic, though all 3 of them knew it was a mask. Yes, Nakata. I am your cousin on your mother's side. Nagato tried to calm the hyper boy. Setting him down beside him he got Nakata to quiet down slightly. If you're my cousin Nagato Otoko, where have you been? Nakata asked curiously, his innocent violet eyes staring into Nagato's equally purple ones. Nagato sighed. I have been leading my village. When I left you 6 years ago, you were a baby and the Hokage promised to look after you. I came yesterday to introduce myself to you. Instead, we found you being chased and beaten, so we stepped in, Nagato explained, getting a nod from Nakata. Wait, you rule a village? Nakata asked excitedly. Nagato nodded, and you are coming with us to live there, the Hokage approved it, Nagato replied. Nakata's eyes widened and he missed the venomous tone in Nagato's voice. I get to come live with you and Konan-chan, and Nakata trailed off as he looked curiously at the silent, 3rd member of the group. Realizing he was being spoken to, Yahiko grinned and waved. Hello Nakata. My name is Yahiko. I'm a friend of Nagato and Konan-chan, he stated, getting a happy nod from Nakata. Yeah, and Yahiko Nai-san. Nakata exclaimed, turning back to Nagato and entirely missing Yahiko choke on his drink when Nakata called him Nai-san. After he stopped coughing, Yahiko smiled at the young red-headed boy. We are going to train you, Nakata. Then, if you want to go back to Konoha, you can. But that can wait for now, Nagato said, rubbing Nakata's head and getting a small glare from the boy. For the rest of the night, Nakata got to know his new family. He learned that Nagato was a powerful shinobi and the leader of a megakure and that his likes were rain, training, and his friends. Konan was a powerful shinobi as well and she liked paper, origami, and her friends. She'd also teased Nakata saying she preferred whiskered boys. But, over the course of the night, Nakata hit it off the best with Yahiko. Yahiko loved pranking, water, and ramen. 2 of Nakata's favorite things. In fact, Yahiko had some ramen with him and they ate the food of the gods together. Eventually, though, Nakata's weariness came forth. He laid down on the ground next to the fire and fell asleep. When he is older we will tell him everything about his parents. I don't trust the old fool to fulfill even that, Nagato said, staring at the sleeping form of his cousin. I will protect you now, Nakata. You are my last remaining family and I won't let any more harm come to you. I agree with Nagato Baka. We will need to figure out if he inherited his parents' Sharingan. He might also have the Uzumaki chains like you do, Yahiko mused, getting a small glare from Nagato for the nickname he had for him. Yahiko pretended not to notice. Konan signed before speaking. First, we will need to help Nakata out from behind his mask. He has gone through a lot of abuse. He's not really happy, but is pretending to be to protect himself from being hurt, she said softly, her amethyst eyes gazing fondly upon the red-headed whiskered boy. Both Nagato and Yahiko nodded before falling back into silence. Next day in Konoha. What? Tsume yelled. Out of the multitude of people in the room, she was the first to react. Shooting out of her chair and glaring daggers at the Hokage, her fangs and claws elongated. Sarutobi quietly sighed, not offering any defense. He had just told the entire council about Nakata being taken by Nagato and his companions. The response was, as he'd imagined. It only took a moment after Tsume's reaction for the whole council room to fall into anarchy. Only a few people remained calm. That was not surprising, as the Haika and Uchiha clan heads rarely showed emotion anyway. Sarutobi declined to answer questions until the room settled down, feeling the headache he had since this morning pounding from the noise. So let me get this straight. You let 3 unknown ninjas come into this village and walk out with our most powerful weapon without a fight. Danzo accused, his one visible eye narrowed at the third. They are not unknown. As some of you know, Nakata is the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. Sarutobi paused to let this bombshell set in for those that didn't already know. Nagato, the red-haired shinobi, was here the night the Kyuubi attacked. Sarutobi was cut off by Yashiro, one of the civilian council members. So he was the one that made the Kyuubi attack. He shouted. The entire rest of the council turned and glared at the man, the message very clear. Shut up. Sarutobi cleared his throat and explained, Nagato, with his 2 friends, Yahiko and Konan, helped Minato to seal the Kyuubi and baby Nakata. The sealing took Minato's life, as he used a special type of seal called the Reaper Death Seal. After a pause, Sarutobi continued. If Nakata decides to return to this village in 5 years, and I can't blame him if he doesn't, by then he will know who his parents were. Minato's father, I don't know who he is, apparently trained Nagato and his friends in the Land of Rain. When Minato's father died, the 3 felt indebted to the man and came to Konoha to introduce themselves to the 4th. They happened to arrive as the Kyuubi were attacking. All in the room listened intently, as no one had known what all had really happened that night. Sarutobi decided that the information about Minato's father and brother, as well as having the Sharingan, didn't need to be shared. Nagato delivered Kushina's and Minato's bodies, along with Nakata, to the Hokage Tower. Minato had left me a scroll, which I read, explaining what had happened and asking me to take care of Nakata. Sarutobi sighed deeply here. I promised to do so, and the next day when I found Nagato staying in a hotel, he made me promise again to look after his cousin. At this, the entire room displayed a variety of shocked expressions. Nagato was very adamant about protecting Nakata, even wanting to take him back with him to Omegakure. I persuaded him to let Nakata stay in his home village, promising to look after the boy. Sarutobi held his head in dismay at this point before continuing. I failed in taking care of Nakata. Entirely failed. I went about introducing him to the village entirely the wrong way. At this point Tsume huffed, having stated that exact thing herself years ago. Sarutobi grimaced. Nagato had told me that he would eventually return to Konoha. He would introduce himself to young Nakata as his cousin, train him, and try to be a part of his life. Sarutobi paused. They arrived yesterday to find Nakata being beaten mercilessly by many villagers and 2 of my own jounin. Aika Hiashi spoke for the first time since the meeting started. Who were these jounin, if I may, Hokage-sama? Sarutobi sighed. Kurenai Yuhi and my son Asuma Sarutobi. The reaction in the room was immediate. While the entire civilian council had not cared one bit about the child being beaten all those years. They were clearly regretting their attitude in light of the possible consequences heading their way. The Shinobi Council collectively dropped their jaws, stunned at the 2 who had been named. In the shadows of the room, a purple-haired Anbu wearing a purple Nico mask stumbled in shock and disbelief. All of the Anbu swiftly got control of themselves and shifted back into that emotionless mentality that they were trained for. Nagato came to my office in a rage, the Anbu trying to stop him. Once I realized who it was, I let him in. Sarutobi seemed to physic himself up before continuing. Nagato was mad, and rightfully so. He immediately attacked and accused me of breaking my promise, which I had done. He didn't stop until 8 of my Anbu intervened and positioned themselves between us. At that point, Nagato declared that he was taking Nakata back with him to Omegakure and that in 5 years, if Nakata wanted to return, he would bring him back. Sarutobi's voice trailed off before raising his head, regret clear in his eyes. I had to let them go. Nagato is a cage-level shinobi, and both Hihiko and Konan are S-ranked. A war with Omegakure would not end well for us regardless if we won. Sarutobi paused, besides, he was right. I had no more right to Nakata. I had failed my promises to Minato. At this, Sarutobi fell silent and stared at the table in front of him. The shinobi and civilian councils processed his words. Danzo didn't let any emotion show on his face, but he was cursing his luck on the inside. If I had gotten to the Kyuubi brat faster, I could have trained him to be a root shinobi. Tsume scoffed loudly before slamming her chair back and leaving the council room. That seemed to signify the end of the meeting, so, one by one, all the council members filed out. Uchiha Fugaku stared at the Hokage for some time before getting up and leaving. This only goes to prove that the Hokage is weak. It is time to step up the plans to put the Uchiha in control, he thought to himself. Tsume stormed down the halls in a rage, quickly leaving the Hokage tower before heading toward her compound. While externally she was angry, and indeed she was also worrying about Nakata. She and Kushina had been good friends. I wonder if Sarutobi will tell Nakata's godparents, though that moron, Jiraiya, is as much to blame for this as Sarutobi. Nakata's apartment. In the shadows created by the moonlight streaming in through the broken and cracked window, a man with spiky white hair could be made out. Kakashi Haddock stood in the middle of what was Nakata's apartment, if the decrepit and falling apart place could even be called a living space. Kakashi's one visible eye stream tears down his mask as he looked at the complete dump that Nakata used to live in. Covering the walls were graffiti and scathing profanities directed at Nakata the demon. The door was barely holding on by a hinge, apparently having been attacked by an axe at some point. But that didn't compare to the inside of the room. Trash was spread evenly across the floor, as if someone had pulled it all out and fished through it. It was evident that Nakata had been trying to collect anything of value with which to make some money. Nakata didn't even have something that looked remotely like a bed. Instead, the small indent of his body could be seen upon a pile of trash bags in a corner. It was hard to distinguish the rooms, and what Kakashi suspected was that the kitchen was instead a destroyed mess of metal and wood, cabinets obviously ripped out of the walls and broken to bits. Kakashi sobbed, I'm so sorry Nakata. Even though I knew you were Minato-sensei's son, I still never came and cared for you. I could have adopted you, I should have, damn what the council would say. I hope one day that you can forgive me. Kakashi fell to his knees and cried, realizing his utter failure to his sensei. Thanks for watching my video. See you next time, till then sayonara.